unmute
A
us
mute, man.
all.
Allow.
I think we're live on Facebook now. Okay. Thank you, Jesus. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight at this unpacking episode number three. And I am overwhelmed today and feel very, very inadequate for what the topic is for tonight. And definitely, I am here. I feel like someone that is telling somebody else's story, but a story that must be told because number one, I believe the story, and number two, I believe I am affected by the story. And tonight, we have with us incredible people that are joining us from across the nation. All of them are my friends, but we do have one particular person who's joined us tonight to share his his song that he had written for his friend, and obviously we're here talking in light of injustice and with the recent killing of our brother Ahmaud Arbery, who died in February 23rd, which was about almost 2 months ago, and the world is just beginning to know his story now. But I am honored to have his high school classmate with us today, his friend, and his name is Brother David, um, and he will share a song with us right now, and then I will introduce our panel, and who joins us, like I said, all across the nation to talk about injustice in light of race. Everybody, please welcome Brother David.
Oh, how high
Would I climb mountains if the mountains were where you hide? Oh, how far I'd scale the valleys if you graced the other side. Oh, how long have I chased the rivers from lowly seas to where they rise against the rush of grace descend from the source of its supply. 'Cause in the highlands and the heartache, you're neither more or less inclined. I would search and stop at nothing. You're just not that hard to find. Sing it out if you know it. I will praise you on the mountains. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. No less faithful when the night leads me astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartaches all the same. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, how far beneath your glory does your kindness extend the path from where your feet rest on the sunrise to where you sleep the sinners high. Oh, how fast would you come running if just to shadow me through the night? Trace my steps through all my failures and walk me out the other side. For who can dare ascend that mountain, that valley hill called Calvary? But for the one I call Good Shepherd, who like a lamb was slain for me. I will praise you on the mountain. I will praise you in the mountains in my way. You're the summit where my feet are. So I will praise you in the valleys all the same. No less God within the shadows. Astray. You're the heaven where my heart is. In the highlands and the heartache all the same. Oh, 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 oh. Sing it out. Oh, wherever I walk through, wherever I am, your name can move mountains. Wherever I stand, and if ever I walk through the valley of death, I'll sing through the shadows my song of the same. Whatever I walk through, wherever I am, your name can move mountains. Wherever I stand, and if ever I walk through of death, I'll sing through the shadows my song of ascent, my song of ascent, my song of ascent. From the gravest of all valleys comes the pasture we call grace, a mighty river flowing upward from a deep but empty grave.
Well, thank you, brother David. Bringing everybody in tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining me in this Unpacking episode, Unpacking Injustice. And like I said in the open, that I feel right now very inadequate, but I do have good amount of people here with me tonight that not only can speak to the situation, but if not one, almost probably everybody has a story to tell about this very thing we're talking tonight. So I'm going to allow everybody to kind of join in and in the conversation and unpack injustice with us here in America. And I'm going to go to my right and just come down the line here. I want to invite Brother Tyree. Tyree, can you share a little bit about yourself, sir?
Sir, uh, I've been all in for Christ for about 21 years. Grew up in church. Um, was a good kid, but didn't come to that realization till I was 21. From there, started in my journey in youth ministry. I've been in youth ministry for about 19 years. I currently work at a alternative school for boys, and I travel and speak. I'm a youth speaker. I speak in schools on a platform of bullying prevention program called Rock Your Bike. And basically, it's basically just letting students know that they have the power to save a life, through action and compassion. And that's kind of the crux of it.
So, Deborah, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Oh, I have been, I don't really know how to say this, but all my life I've known the Lord, but I didn't get saved technically until I was in my 20s. I have been a prayer warrior now for some time. I teach. I used to teach academically in New York City at CUNY, media culture, and now I am down in Georgia and I help out Cornerstone Church with their media department as help. I consider it helping them go live stream and going to get amazing enough. But God is good. And while I'm here, I am praying for the great revival to be birthed here.
Amen. Bishop.
Praise the Lord. I'm Bishop Lionel Joseph Trilla, Jackson, Mississippi, founding pastor of the Epicenter Church, born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was supplanted here or had to relocate here after Hurricane Katrina. Started to work here. This is the second work I've done apostolically from the ground up myself. Been pastoring this work for about 10 years. Grew up in the church like most of us, knowing of the Lord, but not necessarily being converted, saved until I was 21 years old. You know, my background extensively. I ran the streets of New Orleans when we were the murder capital. And the Holy Ghost got a hold of me after a near-death experience at the age of 21. So now married, 23 years, my wife, father of 8, grandfather of 7. And so here in Jackson, Mississippi, doing the work for the Lord.
And Brad.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brad Smith. First of all, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Unfortunately, it's for something that's not so pleasurable. But just to share a little bit about myself, been in the ministry now for about 20 years, the last 10 years here locally in Maryland, Western Maryland, in the inner city aspects of ministry. And really my goal is to serve in the community, to give back from some things that I kind of took out of the community, lived stereotypical young Black life, done all the things that have been stereotyped across America. I've been a part of those things, but at the same time, I was a church boy. Like a lot of you said, I grew up on the pews. My great aunts, the mothers of the church, laid hands on me all the time and oiled me down and prayed over me. And I'm just so grateful. So it's in that spirit that I'm here tonight with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad, for joining us. Pastor Luke.
Hey, everybody. Luke Smith, a pastor in Evansville, Indiana, here in the Midwest. Husband of a beautiful wife. Amen. 5 amazing children. I'm also international director of the Apostolic World Christian Fellowship. The headquarters are here in Evansville, Indiana. So just want to take this opportunity to tell you, Jones, thank you so much for this forum. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm honored to be here with each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
And thank you all for joining us. Today, I am really just want to go and unpack the situation with Brother Arbery. I know that we all talked about ministry and things of that nature, which tells of the amount of people that we interact with, the amount of people that we are faced with. Just how did the news how I heard about this the murder of Ahmaud was through Bishop Lionel's posting. I didn't hear it throughout any of the media outlets. I saw it as a post from Bishop Lionel, and it really shook me. And I thought, what's going on? How come these things are not being spoken about? Bishop, can you start us off as to what caused you to really kind of say, hey, let's talk about this, because Corona is in the spotlight right now, but this young man's death needs to be spoken about.
Yes, and I'm a pastor. As a pastor, I'm already a community leader, a uh, community advocate in that sense. I don't consider myself an activist, but just being able to advocate for justice, I believe is the call of all of us who are called to Christ. And so I came across the post, and I actually thought it was one of my own members. And when I stopped to read it, because he looks a lot alike a young man I pastor in our church by the name of Brother Pat Hobson. And I thought it was Brother Pat. So I stopped and I began to read and research it. And just like you, I said to myself, I was like, wow, this took place in February. Hadn't heard of it. Of course, we know coronavirus, COVID-19 dominating our media. We understand that, and I understand the sincerity of that. However, I had already said, it seems like everything else just went silent when Corona and COVID-19 took over the airwaves. We stopped sex trade. We stopped hearing about the sex ring. We stopped hearing about everything. And it almost made you think that these kind of things maybe either died down or, of course, was no longer hitting the headlines. So I felt it was my responsibility, if nothing else, to use my platform, to use my influence, to at least share and bring some awareness to it. And I think that original post I shared like 500 shares. And I have a good friend of mine here who works with NAACP here. And she said, Brother Trill, until you shared it, I had not heard anything about it. So just thank God that we were able to raise awareness and do our part to bring light to that great injustice concerning Brother Ahmaud Arbery.
Sister Deborah, I know that when we spoke, when I asked you to join us in this panel, you said, "Oh, I knew already." You're from Georgia. What was going on over there while the nation was talking about coronavirus? What was going on over there in Georgia that we didn't know about?
Well, first of all, I come from a long line of police officers, okay? And so there's some things that the public is unaware of, and that's like spinning. And they will spin something according to what's best for the officer involved in the shooting. And so what happened in this case in Georgia, they kept it, you saw how the DAs, everything was just swept under the rug. And when they started to spin it, for here, they just thought coronavirus would just shut it down. But you see, they had a lot of problems. And one of the problems, well, one, I started to pray because my thing was, God, we got to go public. This has got to go public. We need it to blow. We need I knew about it. But I mean, unless we get it in the public, it's gonna, something's got to kick it over to bring awareness. And coming from understanding a little bit of knowledge about PD and how they operate, they will start spinning a story immediately according to what's best for the officer. The problem they had with this situation was they first told the mother that he was robbed, that he was involved in a robbery or burglary or whatever it was that she was told, and the owner, killed him. And they would have made sure everything fell out that way, but they had a few problems. One, they didn't realize that there was another 911 call, and the woman said he went into the abandoned house, the reconstructed house, and he came out. Did he have anything in his hands? No. They were trying to establish whether he stole something. He had nothing in his hands. Well, that helped him because one, he didn't steal anything. Two, he didn't have a gun. So they can't, argue that he had a gun. These are two major things when spinning a police lineup type of, spinning a story for the police. And the next thing that happened was then you had the video that came out. But my thing was I was praying because down here it was like silent. It was just as they kept it so silent. They were just trying to ease it. They were hoping they could pass it underneath the rug. But it went public. I forgot the gentleman's name. He brought it to light on YouTube. And the family, matter of fact, the day it came live, the family hired the lawyer. That was the day that it came, that, I became aware of it, was the exact day that they hired their lawyer. And we was praying. I just started praying. I said, God, you got to go public with this. If we don't go public with this, they're going to be able to sweep this right under the rug. But thank God he answered prayer.
Amen. I we're not here to kind of retell the news. I'm really the reaction aspect of it. I'm gonna open it up. When you guys, anybody would like to address this, when you first heard the news, what went through your mind?
I'll speak into this place real quick. When I first heard the news, I became really unsettled. I didn't want to hear it. Matter of fact, I began to walk away from the sound that I was hearing. And then when I began to look on social media and begin to read the stories, I would glimpse, but then I would look away because in my spirit, in my soul, I knew that it had happened again. I still have not looked at the video. I can't stomach looking at the video right now. I've gotten to a place where I don't want to say I've become comfortable in the numbing of not having to deal with it. I've gotten to that place, but something is stirring inside of me that now is the time to really begin to speak spiritually, in a spiritual place concerning what's going on. We're at war. It's a spiritual battle. We can't allow it to become a carnal battle. It's already becoming that outside of who we are as the body of Christ. So it's in that place that I'm dealing with anxiousness because it's time.
Thank you, brother Brad. Um, my God.
I would like to, if I could speak on it. Um, so, so when I heard, my first thought was, how do I, how do I address this, speak on this without being the angry black guy in the room? And so that is really tough to navigate through. Um, Sterling Brown, he put a video out on Friday that echoes like my words. He did his run 2.23 miles, and he said he normally runs with a mask, and he was saying I should take the mask off. He said, no, I need to leave the mask on. He held up this mask and he said, for so many times, for being able to try to negotiate and trying to be in circles where it's a predominantly white crowd, he felt he had to put on a mask and present himself a certain way and speak a certain way so he wouldn't be that angry one in the room or that aggressive one in the room. He kind of had to dumb down his personality so he could fit in. And I have been able to be in a lot of different circles, and a lot of different circles revolve around a lot of white people. And so there's a part of me that is like, that is stirring up because I have an athletic son. Um, could be any one of our sons. Um, could be any, I really want to, and I guess because I'm in this place, I know the moment it becomes about race, it automatically divides the room. Like it automatically divides the room, light skin, dark skin, black, white, like whatever. It automatically divides the room. Just like when a political figure steps up, depending on who the party is, it literally splits the room right in half. And so my way to address these things is to, although in my gut, immediately it was like it's possibly a race issue. Like there's, jokes, Georgia and black folks, and you don't want to go down there and watch where you're at. You know what I mean? So it's already like there. But to address it, I wanted to just take race out of it and say, man, should humanity gun down humanity in the middle of a road? No, it shouldn't happen with black on black crime. It shouldn't happen with white on white crime. It shouldn't happen with Asian on Asian crime. It shouldn't happen, period. So let's address this issue because the elephant in the room, always in this discussion, is what about black on black crime? Yes, it's almost like it's the first thing that kind of like eases the punch in the gut. Well, the what about is, well, what about? It's like, what about it? It's still wrong. It's still wrong. Um, and I don't put my security in an irresponsible person with a gun to do responsible things. So if we're going to talk about black on black crime, if we're going to label the person committing the black on black crime as the thug or the uh, the troublemaker or whatever, then let's paint all irresponsible people with the same brushstroke and let's demand justice for them. Let's do the same thing that will happen: kick down doors, get them within 24 hours, um, dig up their past, do all these things to the person that caused the murder. The issue that brings it up in the race is how come doors weren't kicked down and how come aggressive measures weren't done to apprehend the people. And so when we look through it as race, it automatically divides it. But when we look at it as humanity and humanity, now let's speak on this. Is there a double standard with certain humanity? Are things overlooked or not looked at? And so these are discussions that they're tight, they're difficult. They are difficult situations, but I wish I could just stop talking about it and it not affect my life, but I can't. I walk into a room. I'm 6'4", 360 pounds, black man. Almost like I command the attention when I walk into a room. So I have to wear this mask of, ha ha, no gun, I'm harmless. Ha, how you doing? I automatically have to present myself in such a way so you don't feel at danger with yourself. And that is a mask that is hard to breathe in, that you constantly have to be on alert for. So when I first heard the news, I thought of another awkward conversation another deflection of what about black on black crime, another, am I going to be looked at as the angry person in the room because it's race? And I just come to look at it as humanity. Like I guess I'm pro-life. You know, I'm for the sanctity of all life. Period. Period. God would say, "Do not murder. Do not murder." An unjust murder, an unjust killing would be a murder. So I believe that unjust murder should all be handled the same way, whether sanctity of life through birth or as they're older. I guess I'm just pro-life like that.
I guess that's really the crux of our topic today, because as much as we'd like to say that's the truth and that every life is held at the same balance of justice, every life is seen as equal, that from this case and throughout the recent history, it seems to fall on our black brothers and sisters. The scale is imbalanced. Um, and I think I talked to Bishop Trailer, and really was wanting to know what his take was, and he had some pretty strong takes. So Bishop, can you share a little bit as to how your response was first?
My heart burns within just hearing Brother Tyree um, so eloquently and yet try as a Christian not to be offensive for being an angry black man in this situation. And once again, wrestling with being apologetic for being a victim. And not saying that you have to have a victim mentality. No one tells the young woman, well, if they do, we definitely penalize them. But when a young woman is raped, we cannot, we don't allow anything to justify her being raped. It doesn't matter if she was scanty, if she wore revealing clothing, if someone came in and said, but she was wearing revealing clothing, someone would say that would never justify the reason for her being raped. Raped her was wrong, period. And it's a straw man's argument who brings on black crime, knowing that every nationality and ethnicity commits crime against itself or in their own community at a higher rate or a higher percentage than those who live on the outside of your community. It's a straw man's argument to bring a black on black crime when we deal with racism or hate crime. When it's a hate crime in the homosexual or lesbian community, we don't bring up, yeah, but homosexuals commit crimes against themselves at a higher rate, which that can be an argument or a statistical argument, seeing that they dwell in their own community more. When you have aggravated assaults or even those type of things, those things happen more in their community amongst themselves than on the outside, simply because they don't deal with the heterosexual community in other aspects. Only when it's time to deal with the nation's oldest sin do we tend to throw straw man arguments. And the nation's oldest sin, America's oldest sin, is racism. And it is racism against the black man. I'm very much Christian, apostolic Christian, Pentecostal Christian, lover of all ethnicities. However, I can't be a lover of truth and continue to divert from this truth. I can't be a lover of biblical truth and divert from this truth, that America has a problem with its black children. Always has. And because America didn't bring us over as black children. America brought us over as a commodity. America brought us over as cattle. Right. America still wrestles with this. And having the conversation amongst us is wonderful. But I've realized something, Pastor Jones, and I know, and I don't want to take up a lot of time. I want to hear from the other panelists. I realized something, that growing up in the streets of New Orleans, having both sides, living both lives, being a Christian and running the streets and being a law-abiding citizen and also being one who broke the law, that it really doesn't matter what side of the law I am on. In America, I'm still a black man.
Right.
In America, I'm still a black man, and I deal with things that no other race or nationality, and everybody has a different American experience. But the American experience of African Americans in this country, even up to now, we can't just deal with the individual hearts of people, because I realize that some people are going to hate you and they're going to teach hate. But we have to talk about systemic racism and the things that allow these people who harbor this hate to be abusive, whether they're in political power, law enforcement, banking and redlining, you name it. It's not about how you feel about me. I can't change that. Only God can change that. But when you manipulate an entire system to protect the disfranchisement and the abuse and the devaluing of an entire people for over 400 years in one country, the laws have to change. This is why it's called injustice. See, in black, and like Brother Tyree said, in black on black crime, here's the reality. If a black person kills a black person in the community, we have a saying: 2 families are about to be hurt. The young man who was killed and the young man who's about to go to jail, or he will experience street justice. There will be justice. There is no getting off. Only in the black community, whether it's blue on black or white on black, that there's typically almost 99% of the time, there will be no injustice. There'll just be bloodshed in the street.
Pastor Luke, I want to invite you into the conversation a little bit, because you sent out immediately after these things began to come to surface. You sent out immediately a text among your circle of ministers and preachers to do something. What motivated you to do that?
Well, I'm here and I kind of represent the middle America Republican conservative gun owning typical white man. But but you have to understand me. You have to know me. I was raised and born and raised into a family. My father and mother were pastors, and we were taught at an early age that there's no color but red. Amen. That the blood underneath the skin is all the same, and that I grew up with African Americans and people from China, the Philippines, and Mexico. Those were my parents' best friends. And in my home, we grew up with Shirley Caesar and Bishop James Cleveland, and that was the kind of music I listened to. I didn't.
Good childhood.
I didn't know anything about. I didn't know anything about Switchfoot, Left Foot, Right Foot. I don't know all those white bands, man. I don't know anything about them. But I grew up in a white community, though, and I want to say this. When I found this out, I have some dear friends. So some of my brothers that are dearest to me. Bishop Traylor, matter of fact, I thank God for his social media outreach, because that's the way I found out. And I have several just really good friends of mine that I know them. They're not looking. They're not seeking to be a victim. They're not seeking to be on the news. They're not trying to raise a stink or trying to get things for any type of self gratification or getting themselves publicized. But when I talked to them, I felt the pain in their voice, and I felt their hurt. And watching the video, I'm kind of like the brother that was talking a while ago. I wish I wouldn't have. I wish that it was painful to watch, because to see this man, and it's completely. I don't see how anybody could justify it. I don't see how anybody. I've literally heard people tried to justify it, and I'm just screaming, what are you doing? You know, this cannot continue. And the travesty is that this happened again. And it's happened too often, too many times. But the thing that started to really bother me is because, like I said, I live in a white community, and there was such talk between friends and families and church members and community neighbors, and we're talking, and we're all saying the same thing. This is wrong. This is wrong that this is happening, and it's happening again. And we're raising an eyebrow, like, you know, how can people just get away from it? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, our silence. What is our silence telling the Black community? What is it that we are not saying is speaking louder than the words that we are saying? And so I feel that the time has come that something has to be done, that our voices have to be heard, to let our Black brothers and our friends and our sisters understand that you're not alone, that people in the white community, we do see you, we do hear you. But the thing is, we've always have kept to ourselves, because to be honest with you, to be very transparent, if it doesn't happen in our neighborhood, we just kind of hold our ears, then it doesn't affect us. But what's sad is because what's it going to take for us to finally pay attention? Is it going to take one of my friends dying? Is it going to take one of friends of mine that I've grown up with and played in the backyard with? Is it going to take one of them getting shot for me to finally care? And I think it's a sad place that we're in. And you know the justification of people. I've literally talked with people who say, well, you got to hear the other side of the story. You got to, and it's by the time they get done talking, you're trying to think to yourself, man, the two guys with the guns, it's almost like they're the victims. And and that's a problem. That is a real problem. And if you stop and think about it, and you reverse the roles. What if it was two Black men that chased down a white man and shot him in the street? What would have the outcry? What would it have been? Would we still seen it as justified? Would we still seen it as something that we can sweep under the rug and just say, well, it happens in society today. We live in this time when, you know, accidents happen, or it was a misunderstanding and they were yelling at it. No, everybody here knows. We know what would happen, and so you know, I was saddened. I'm still saddened. We were preparing a group, and I had an outpour of people that was calling me, and they're ready to go. But what we were looking for the immediate arrest of the McMichaels, the son and father. And by the grace of God, they were arrested later on that night. So some of my the pastor that I was working with on the ground in Atlanta, they kind of said, wait, stand still. Let's, because we got what we needed right now, but we're going to see what happens in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So, but the whole purpose is we want the community to know that we're with them, that the Black community know that you're not by yourself. It should not be my friends and my brothers screaming out for help and screaming out to the community. And all the while, we who know that it's wrong just as much, we sit there and say nothing. Our silence is deafening. And I'm getting ready, and I don't want anybody to think that I don't care about what you're saying, or I'm getting ready to have to log off here in a minute. I'm actually, we've called an emergency meeting tonight. We'll have leaders and bishops and pastors literally from California all the way to New York, Florida, Georgia, Texas. They'll all be online here in about the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to cut. But I thank you for this opportunity, and I would love to continue this dialogue at a later time if I can. But Jones, thank you so much. I love each and every one of you. Bishop, it's good seeing you, sir.
Always
hey, man,
good.
I wish I had them arms, man. You look like you've been curling refrigerators or something. So I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
I love you, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Pastor Jones.
Yes, sir.
Jones,
Go ahead.
can I just echo? I know Pastor Luke has to leave, but he said something that was very powerful. He said, if the roles had been reversed, we all know what the outcome would be. And let me tell you something, in the Black community, we know what the outcome would be. That's why you don't see the Black community doing things like that.
Right.
You would have a easier time finding a needle in a haystack than finding 2 or 3 Black men willing to chase down a white young man in a suburban neighborhood or urban neighborhood in the middle of the day and kill him on an open street in public. You would find young men willing to join Crips, Bloods, but they won't be willing to do that.
No, sir. Only in the movies, Bishop. Only in the movies, Bishop. Only in the movies.
Only in the movies, my friend. That's why that's not reported, because it's not typical. It's almost frightening in the mind of a Black man to even, and this is the truth. This is systemic, but it's almost frightening in the mind of a Black man that he can kill a white man in America and get away with it.
Right.
Wow.
Hey, Pastor, speaking to this a little bit. So as the bishop was speaking about systemic, and I heard the apostolic leader, and he was talking about, we're not just sitting back this time. The question that God began to deal with my heart concerning this, because I feel that way, the uneasiness that's going on within me, the turmoil that's going on within me. When does the church begin to have this conversation? When do we begin to have this dialogue as the body of Christ that believes in one God, divided in 3 persons? When do we begin to have a conversation that says, as a whole, collectively, that something is wrong systemically, and we will not be a part of it systemically? I think that becomes the most important thing, because the scripture tells us that we're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but principalities, systems.
Right.
And if we're really kingdom-minded, then we ought to automatically understand that the system that we're living in is full of injustices. And in our righteousness coming from the kingdom of God, when do we confront it?
Can I say something here? I need to address a few things. When Bishop spoke about women, doesn't matter if she was wearing whatever. That's not true for Black women. I got news for you. If it was a white male that raped a Black woman, or a man of authority, I got news for you. She asked for it. It took years to try to get, let's just say, legislation. Thank you.
Yeah.
To actually change, and even in the police departments where they would have the women, having a woman come and be with the woman and talk with the woman who has been raped, and to not have a man question her and deal with her, and like she was wearing skanky clothes and stuff like that. And I can tell you firsthand that one of the things when I was raped, they would say, there was a lot of questions whether or not I was a teenager, and they were saying, we don't know if she could take the cross-examination. They will rip her apart on the stand, okay? Because they're allowed to do so. They're allowed to tear you apart, especially if you're a Black female, okay? So we still haven't come a long way on that one, okay? Yeah. We're still working on that one, all right?
I agree. I think my scenario, I should have said, if there had been a young white girl or a white woman, because you're right. It does move different. And this is the truth. Justice moves differently for Black people. Now, you made a powerful statement, and I'm yielding right back to you. I would say that there's still a feminist movement, and that feminist movement has also moved the pendulum toward protecting Black women. There's movements to protect women. There's movement to protect children. There's movement to protect in general. Right. But there's still no movement to protect Black men.
No, most definitely. I agree with you. But one thing that you have to also remember is that you are coming up. You're not just coming up against a white male. And this is what I'm trying to point out, which people don't seem to understand. The law is different for a regular white man versus a white police officer.
That's true.
Okay. And you have to understand that in that regard. And what is happening here is he was a retired investigator for 2 counties. Okay. He wasn't just, a police officer. He had access to 2 different counties. He was in, you're talking small towns. I'm not even talking about like NYPD. I'm not talking about Atlanta. I'm not talking about huge police departments. I'm talking about small town units where everybody knows, like Mayberry, everybody knows everybody. Okay. And so you're talking about police rallying around this man, rallying around his son, and they're going to spin it because you have the wall of blue. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the wall of blue, but it's very powerful. And I'm not saying that I know some great police officers. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, my grandfather was killed in the line of duty as a police officer. I've had uncles in the police officer, cousins in the, this is the first generation in my family. We don't have any cops. Thank you, Jesus, because it's getting hairy out there. But the bottom line here is this is why it took, the silence was so thickening that it was that it was so deafening. The silence was to protect this man, and they rallied around him. Remember the DA that came out and all gave a citizen's arrest. How was it a citizen's arrest when he didn't see a crime?
Yeah.
He didn't see a crime. Citizen's arrest is only when a felony has been committed can you do a citizen's arrest. This was an old time modern day lynching.
So
unless the crime is skin color on the wrong block.
Yeah.
Unless
exactly.
Unless in your mind there is a crime, and the crime is you don't belong here.
Exactly.
And so now all eyes are on you, and now my imagination is running wild, and now I'm putting 2 and 2 together, coming up with 5, and my math is off, and you're already guilty, and so you're guilty of the crime, and so that's what jumping to conclusions. My concern is
brother,
the good old boy privilege system of
let me interrupt you for a second. Ahmaud is the one who's guilty from their perspective.
You're right.
Okay.
Right.
From his perspective, because of the color of his skin, being in the wrong environment, walking into that house, okay, even though he was just looking, I've done that where I've gone to a house that's being constructed and looked because it may have been interested in buying the thing.
Yeah, but Ahmaud's not the only one that's guilty. We're all guilty, which is the point that Tyree was going to. We're all guilty of the same crime. It just depends on what date, what time, what they want us to be guilty of. What they want to put. It's systematic. There's a systematic, and we keep looking and we keep down into specific incidents, but this thing is systematic. It was built in when we landed here. Well, when we were brought here, when we were enslaved into this country, the system was designed to keep us enslaved, mentally, physically, as well as spiritually. And so we can talk about the details of particular items, instances, but we'll never get to a resolution by doing that. See, that's my uncomfortability about this whole thing, is because it happened in 1990, but it also happened in 1890, and it happened in 1770, and in 1665. So here we are in 2020. I don't want to have the same conversation. I don't want the details of blue walls and white walls and all that. We have to look at the source of this thing, and we have to collectively come together and begin to deal with the source of this thing. Otherwise, I don't have time for it. I'm going to turn it off and go back to bed.
Well, here it is, Brother Brad. And I feel like I get like that sometimes too, Sister Deborah, where I don't feel like the conversation is needed, right? But I also understand that if I don't have the conversation, that I feel like those on the inside, the Black community, we know, right? But then there's a generation, or maybe even 2 generations of those that we say have white privilege, who don't even understand what white privilege is, that are benefiting in a system that is custom made and tailor made and designed for their advancement, and to continue to keep us in a perpetual cycle of poverty, disease, continue to fill the prison system. That's why I say we don't need to politicize this, because on both sides of this America, we the ones who consistently do not benefit. So I agree with Brother Brandon. Sometimes you're going, okay, so what is the reason for having this conversation? One, for a good friend of mine like Pastor Jones, who is not 75, 80 years old, who doesn't understand all that comes with it, and he himself is a man of color. Or Pastor Luke, who says, I didn't grow up this way, but I'm living in a world that's like this, and he understands his white privilege. You understand? Mm-hmm. So we're having this conversation, not because we don't know, but to help them say, hey, we need y'all to help us change this system.
Right.
Why y'all need us to help you change the system? Because it was designed for you. It was designed for you. And when you begin to move into places of influence and power that will not allow us to get in there, we want to see your Christianity now. We want to see your love for us and all of humanity now. I need Pastor Luke to see Ahmaud Arbery, to understand all of it, from Trayvon Martin to Sean Bell to Freddie Gray to Atiniati Jefferson. I need Pastor Luke to see that. I need men like Pastor Luke to see that. Pastor Luke has international influence, and God knows where he will end up in the next 10 years. We have a generation that is coming up now that can be like the generation in the 60s that helped us move the pendulum forward, who can actually help us break this thing, who can help us say, no, we need to revitalize the whole system. Because right now, our Constitution is being shaken anyway.
Yes, sir.
It's not like folks really paying attention. We have an opportunity right now, and we may take another million-man march, because we're at the door. We're at I would say a 100-year door where Reconstruction, where they bombed Black Wall Street, and all that. We're at that door where we can be that again. And if we don't change the systems, we'll repeat those things. We have more Black millionaires and billionaires now than we've had the last 100 years. We hold positions of power now, but we're wrestling with a system that don't want you to have that power.
Most definitely.
That they see it coming. They're the same system, and I'm not arguing, I'm not fussing, I'm talking about the data that said in the next 20 years, our white brothers and sisters may no longer be the majority in America. And there's a group of white America that is petrified of that.
Yes.
And so now they're using that system to re-push oppression. This is why Black men, though they're being let out of jail now for Schedule I drugs, they're dying at an alarming rate at the hands of police officers. Why? If we can't make money off you in prison, we'll just go ahead and bury you. And it is not just to our Black brothers. We had Sandra Bland. We got Black sisters ending up dead in the hands of. So it is systemic. It is real. It is happening.
Very soon.
And our help is going to come from the Lord, and it's going to come from a unity amongst Black people. And we need brothers and sisters who say that they love God and love humanity to do what Pastor Jones is doing right now.
Yes,
and Pastor is doing, calling out their group, their loved ones, their constituency, their church, and say, you ain't gonna have hate here. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. There's a group here called Mission Mississippi, where leaders across different denominations and ethnicities come together, Blacks and whites and everything. And I remember sitting in one of the groups saying, if all we're gonna do is talk about it, y'all don't need me here. I said, we need to actually, I want to see this so-called fellowship in action.
Yes, sir.
Not just with the pastors. Bring your Black people and your white people and your Latino people, and let's all, that's what I love about the AWCF. Let's all get together. And if I can't preach if I can't stand my Black self in the pulpit and preach to your predominantly white church and lay hands on your predominantly white people, then there's something wrong.
Yes.
Because I can let the white man preach to me, and the white man come pray for me and receive him as a man. Now, I know folks say we don't need to see color. God is colorblind. God is not colorblind.
He's not colorblind. Yes, sir.
God made the color and then told us to love each other.
Yes.
So I can look at you, white, Latino, Filipino, and still say, I love you. Now come put your right hands on my head and pray for me. I love you. You're Native American. It don't matter, because the love of God is truly in my heart.
Yes, sir.
And that's the testament.
Yes, sir.
If you can only love me as long as I'm serving you, then you love me as a servant.
Mm.
But if you can love me and serve me, then you love me as as kingdom.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop, when you say that, and that's what I'm talking about. See, you set the narrative. We got to set the narrative. We're not talking the points and stuff that the media and the world has set up. You're talking kingdom conversation right now. And I guess that was the point that I was making just now. I don't want to get into what the world politics and the views of it are. We need to be having this kingdom conversation amongst ourselves so that we can go fellowship if we're going to be, even the word kingdom, that word defines and talks about the socialization of the people, Jews and Gentiles. We see it there. So that was the point that I was making when I was saying what I was saying earlier. What you're talking about. Yes, sir. That needs to be the crux of every conversation that we have, is right there.
Yeah, I believe there's some things that Pastor Luke said. I truly believe that much of this, if not all of this, will stop. We as believers see humanity as image bearers, as I do not want to rob the world of an image bearer of God.
Amen.
And he also said, like, what will it take to stop this thing, right? And so I think COVID-19 is a great illustration and an understanding of how poverty can be systematic.
Mm-hmm.
So we had people at Michigan willing to bring guns, willing to not listen to social distancing calls because of the fear of poverty. Like, poverty is worth storming into a Capitol building with rifles, assault rifles, automatic weapons. Like, poverty is worth fighting for, and a community knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we look at that and we're like, all image bearers, like, if I'm offended that poverty could land on my doorstep, I should be offended that it should land on any image bearer's doorstep. And we see the systematics of things. If something is closed or you don't have access to it, things begin to shut down and poverty begins to infiltrate a community. It's systematic, right? And so Benjamin Franklin, he has this great quote. He says, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it goes back,
true.
and it goes back to being image bearers. Like, it will, like, I believe that Martin Luther King was a great man, but I believe great strides were taken when people that didn't look like him, but looked like the oppressor, were like, yes, I'm with you. And then they linked arms with him. And then the oppressor began to see themselves in the protest.
Bingo.
And some were rattled and like, whoa, what are you're messing things up. And some took the beatings right along with Martin Luther King. Some took the beatings at the restaurant. Some took the beatings at letting them into communities. And they were like, this is not going to stop. Matter of fact, it's so systematic that crack was crack until white people took it and they called it cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
And that there was like drug addiction in communities and it wasn't dealt with until white people started being affected in high numbers. Then they called it an opioid epidemic.
Right.
And now we have grants to stop the thing. Back in the day, we had Just Say No.
Well, see, it's a devaluing of an entire people. So it's a devaluing, right? So it's a crack epidemic, and you go to war when it's in the Black community and it's in the urban or the Black and brown community, and you make laws and you get mass incarceration when it was when it was crack or heroin in the Black and brown community. Now you take and put that heroin or opium into the predominantly white community or to suburban kids are getting it. And then it makes it all the way to Congress. It makes it all the way to the Hill. They now, once again, change legislation. This is the only thing that's going to stop. Like I say, it's not that Black people or a Black thug or a Black gangster is intimidated of killing a white man, or a Black man himself may be intimidated of raping a white woman. Now, I'm just using those criminal elements since we're talking about criminal elements. but they think in their mind, they will throw the book at me.
Mhm.
They will throw the book at me for touching up. So he's thinking about the laws. He's thinking about legislation. And a white man, he commits the same crimes.
And changes the law.
That's right. The law protects him or he gets less time. So the law in this country, that's why we're talking about systemic racism. The law in this country protects our white brothers and sisters, our white counterparts, even its white criminals, even its white derelicts. They are more protected under the law than we are.
Bishop,
and
would you
see
speak?
that you can be, you don't have to have no tattoos, no golds in your mouth. You don't have to have a criminal background. You don't have to do any of those things and be criminalized and devalued in America because your blackness is what makes you guilty until proven innocent. And if you ever proven guilty, the data proves you're always harshly more punished for the same crime than your white counterpart. This is systemic.
Bishop,
Right.
how would you address this aspect of it, Bishop? We looked at it in the middle, Tyree, you guys, but I look at it even at Iran and Contra. How did the crack even get in our communities? We were devalued from the beginning of the whole situation because there was no value in our life that they allowed the drug to be inundated in our communities, and we were already suffering for it before any money got involved, well, on our part, because the money was being sent out to fight a war. So even that aspect of it needs to be addressed. Somebody has to own this stuff that's falling on our back. Bishop, how would you address that part of it?
So and so I got white brothers and sisters or brothers and sisters of different ethnicities who will say, and they'll say, hey man, I'm not a politician, or I don't legislate laws that let that stuff in and things of that nature. And I understand their heartbeat. They may be just as ignorant to those dynamics. The only thing that they may know of is what they see on the news and what they see in movies, right? They're culturally shocked at some of the things that we have conversations about. Because if it's not taught to them, or if it's not in their news, they like you said, if it don't bother them, like Luke said, if it don't show up on your front porch, hey man, I didn't know. But this is why we can't miss moments like this, or our culture and our community and our country can't get numb to things like this. Because the first thing they want to do again is criminalize the black man. Well, he stole something when he was in junior high. Well, he was walking on that property and it wasn't his. There were two other white gentlemen that walked on the property too, but that didn't make the news. Walked on the property before Ahmaud got there. Walking on the property doesn't make him a criminal. And then we don't want to have the conversation about, like we say, transgenerational poverty, the criminalization of Black people, the dehumanization of Black people, mass incarceration, and the way we deal with things. And as the church, we have been silent. Now, this is what I know about the church, and I'm gonna move back out the way. What we've seen, and I don't want to politicize this, I'm not talking about politics, I'm just talking about the power of the church. We've seen 250 evangelicals in this country, and a great bulk of them got behind one presidential candidate, period. And the Christian right in this country put our president to office. I'm not here to talk sides because I'm a registered independent. I don't even get into all that. I see politics. I know it's a game. My point is, if the Christian church alone took a greater stand against civil injustice, this would stop in America and laws would change. We don't need politicians to help the Black man in America. The civil rights movement was led by the church.
Yes, sir.
Those white brothers and sisters that Brother Tyree was talking about were people who were moved by Christian conviction or spiritual conviction, not political conviction.
Yes, sir.
And once again, here we are 50, 60 years later, an entire generation, maybe a generation and a half later, it's going to have to be those of us who are led by spiritual conviction, who take our pulpits and our platforms and say, no more. And it's going to have to be white brothers and white sisters and Native Americans and Filipinos and Latinos standing together under one banner, whether it be the banner, like Brother Tyree said, of humanity, or the banner of Christ, and say, stop it. Either you punish us equally or you don't punish us at all. The laws must be changed.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it can be all put under the umbrella of image bearer, right? Image bearers, period. We are the image bearers.
Image of God.
of Christ. Yes,
Right.
All
Yes,
men
sir.
I
created
am
in the
made
image
in
of
the
God.
image of God,
That's right.
just like my white neighbor is made in the image of
Image
God.
of God. That's
Even the
right.
non-believer, right? The thug is an image of God.
You creating the image of
The
God.
the redneck, the hillbilly, is an image of God. So therefore,
Yes,
I
sir.
treat all images of God with equal respect.
That's right.
None is greater, none is lower. Democrat, Republican. I'm a registered independent because I felt it best to sit in the middle and call the
That's right.
hypocrisy out on both sides.
Yes,
As
sir.
am
So
I.
I said I'm going to be a registered independent.
Yes,
As am I.
And so and with legislation, like when you're in prison and you're convicted, you can't vote. You can't change laws. So what better way to stop things from being passed than to lock a culture up? They can't vote.
Hmm.
Like, don't vote to change the laws.
That's right.
And
It's
yeah, and it's
and
yeah,
you could be a convicted felon on something that is non-violent,
yes,
in anything. But once you lose the right to bear arms and the right to vote,
yes,
I doubt if you really considered yourself a citizen
Right.
when you can't
right,
vote and you can't
Well,
bear
Absolutely.
arms.
right.
wait a minute. When you're a convicted felon, there are rules about education. You cannot get
Yes,
Pell or
ma'am.
TAP.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
cannot. There's check the box,
Yeah,
and
so
check the
so we
box is
took
designed
yes,
to keep people. And I'm not talking people of color. This is anybody
Yeah.
that has a felony record. The system is designed to keep felons as felons and citizens as citizens. They
right,
come out, they can't get jobs. They can't. Of course, if they can't get jobs, they can't find a place to live. They're on the street. What do? They go back to what they know, where it has been proven that educational wise, before, I'm not going to say what party, but before it was voted out about prisoners being able to get Pell and TAP and FICA and all of the good things that they could get in not FICA, FAFSA. They could get FAFSA. Was actually a legislation that was passed that people in prison could not get FAFSA, and
Right.
it changed the dynamics because literally 80% they said would reoffend, but when they're educated, that 80% drops because it comes out to 20% will reoffend and the rest won't. It literally will, go and do the right thing, which means that affects society as a whole, because that means somebody's not getting mugged, somebody's not getting raped, somebody's not being sold drugs to, somebody's not being killed
So that means
because
the prisons
are
are not being.
going down the right path. But without the education is the enlightenment to let that individual become a productive member of society. But we automatically, because of that law that was passed, now those individuals are automatically stuck in an education of prison
So now,
education.
they're in a cycle now. That
They're in a
prison,
cycle now.
that's right,
Exactly. A perpetual
school,
cycle.
the prison pipeline,
Exactly.
and it's very very financially. It's a financial gain to keep those prisons at an 80% occupancy. All of the studies have come out, especially for those who moved into privatization of prisons. Prisons is a big money.
Business, big
It's,
business.
yeah.
prison is big money, but
Not-
but you're filling up the prisons on the back of murder and crime of your own American citizens. So
Exactly.
it is systemic. It is systemic. It is systemic. And it's
Yeah.
going to take a public outcry. What the civil rights movement was. It was a public demonstration, a public outcry, and it's going to take that again. But I don't think that this generation is going to beg, and this generation is not going to ask. I will say this: if they don't, and I feel this in the Holy Ghost. This now, I try not to get overtly spiritual in these kind of conversations.
Go ahead, Bishop. Go ahead, Bishop.
I feel this in the Holy Ghost. Just like righteous Abel blood was crying out.
Yes, sir.
I still believe righteous blood cries out. The Bible talks about the souls that were under the altar of the Lord saying, how long till you vindicate us?
Yeah, my
Right.
God.
That's
And
right.
the Lord
That's right.
said, it won't be long, but there's more of your brothers and sisters that will be
That's
murdered,
right.
and then I will vindicate. I
That's
believe
right.
the cup of trembling for America is trembling right now.
Yes, sir.
And I do believe that the church is going to have to move to the forefront and cry out for righteous blood, or we will see bloodshed on the streets of America, brother pit against brother, black against white, because you can only push a man in a corner so far before you realize I'm gonna die in this corner. If I just let you kill me, I'm gonna die if I come out swinging. And you've taken, this country has taken everything from Black America. It really has. And you know, well, you had one become president. Okay. Now, and I know I'm on Facebook Live and I got many friends watching, but I want you to hear the truth. We never get excited about you promoting just one. We call that in my community a token Negro. I had an opportunity. I was offered to pastor in a predominantly white movement simply because I spoke well. I was very articulate. I can doctrinally dissect the word of God. And I'm very charismatic and a beautiful smile. And it was told, they will give you a church. And I said, no, I don't want the church because I can't live with myself being the token. Are you listening to me? So there will come a shaking in this country that's going to be greater than coronavirus if we don't stop this madness. And they must be, Pastor Jones, I appreciate you so much. There must be more men like you, like Pastor Luke, like I saw Pastor Jeremy Foster, who's taking their platform and saying, listen, y'all can't keep doing this to the black man, the black woman in America. How long? The last king came peacefully. The next king will not. The last king was Martin Luther King. He was a peace bearer. The next king will not come peacefully. Every generation picks their leader. The atmosphere produces the leader. I'm afraid that if you're not in the black community, you don't understand the language that's coming out the black community, especially out of this young generation that don't know history. They've dumbed down their music. Their music is not as positive, not as intellectual, not as energetic. This generation will not give you a Martin Luther King. I guarantee you that. And they own guns and they don't care about dying.
So Bishop, so the aggressiveness that you hear from me is because that's where I'm at.
Yeah, right.
And what you're saying validates it. You're validating it. There is not a peaceful conversation going on right now.
Not the millennials and Gen Zs. They don't have what the silent generation or the boomer generation had, whether you want to call it passivity or just the peace of God from relationship with God. This generation don't even have the relationship with God that my grandmother's generation had.
That's right.
They don't understand tarrying, praying, and waiting. Wait for what? They don't know about waiting for nothing. they feel just as entitled as their white counterparts.
Yes,
sir.
And
you know, you were saying, both of you both were saying regarding the fact that the black man is at a position where he has to fight back or die. And I want you to think about Ahmaud, because that's what he was facing when he came up on that truck.
Yes,
he
ma'am.
saw the guy standing there with the rifle. He saw the gentleman
still charged and fought him back.
Yes,
even after he was shot.
Knew that there
Yes,
was this was going to be him or them.
Yes, ma'am.
He didn't. There was no, well,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
I get away or anything else? They had really blocked him in when the son had gotten out the car and got on the other side of the vehicle with his gun and his rifle, so he couldn't even run. Because if you look, he tried to run around them. He tried to go around them, and he couldn't because he met the son. And that's when the tussling started.
So even with that, like if you're guilty, you will run from something.
Right.
You won't run to it.
That's right.
Right. And so if I'm running away from something and I'm found guilty or whatever, I'm running down a side street. I'm running across the road. I'm running the other way. Jumping over a fence. I'm not running to, and I'm not going to like run around. I'm going to run at a straight angle, like at a right angle, away from everything. And so this alone tells me that he didn't feel like he was in the wrong. There's a guy in a Facebook group I'm with. He lives in the town of Brunswick, Georgia. He knows him. He knows the perpetrators. He says his perpetrator is known for calling people the N-word that are walking past his house. said that he knows Ahmaud, that Ahmaud was going to school to be an electrician. He said, if anything, he's in the house looking at electrical work. That this is the past you don't know about Ahmaud. That you don't know he's going to school to be an electrician, right? And so I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm married to a white woman, and I said, well, honey, there was a time we went into a house, right? That we went somewhere. She said, yeah, me, you, and my dad, when we were looking for houses, we went to a house and we walked around and we looked through the window and tried the door, and the door was open and nobody was home. And I'm like, that's the house we went into. Yeah, we went into the house and said, I remember going into the house. I remember there being no lights. I remember us using our cell phones for lights to walk through the house and do all that. And she said, yeah. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of my white counterparts that go around homes and construction buildings, construction complexes, and look at stuff, whether they're trying to buy or looking at the competition, how they're developing things, different things like that, and they walk out fine. If anything, it's like, I wonder what they're doing over there, and that's it, right?
Well, you're so black, brother. You are presumed, oftentimes by many,
guilty.
But oftentimes you're presumed to be up to something nefarious, right, something diabolical. I've changed my attire mostly since I've become a bishop and growing up in New Orleans. I don't wear as much street attire as people may think. So a lot of times I walk into places, but I'm in my slacks, my button up, my blazer. I typically wear that most of the time. And I get a different reaction off, right? Mm-hmm. So, however, I have been while I'm in my t-shirt or pair of fatigue shorts or something like that, and you get a completely different feeling, because I'm 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds, right? And I'm very masculine. And one of the reasons I smile as often now is because I'm just saved and delivered. But I didn't always smile. I'm from New Orleans, right? And so typically I can be perceived, okay, like you said, brother, is he trouble? Right. We fit the description, Pastor Jones. Pastor Jones, when me and Pastor Jones was talking, he said this is something that he really couldn't relate to or he couldn't understand. The bottom line is he would never fit the description. Right. He would never know what it is to just fit the description. And the description comes across television. It's the opening story, 5'11" to 6'4", somewhere between 150 to 250 pounds, black man, white t-shirt. And you always, Trayvon Martin fit a description because he had a hood on his head. You're black and you're in the hood, so it must be nefarious. And we always fit the description. We're presumed guilty until we can prove our innocence, brother.
Right. Well, wait.
So what's the description?
Guys. Hold on, guys. What you guys don't know, but Pastor Jones does, is I'm 6'7". I'm a black woman, and when I wear a hoodie, I'm not going to say my weight, but let's just say
guilty.
Okay, and I put on. I'm a ball player, and I dress like a ball player unless I have to do church, and then church, got to look good for daddy. Right. But when I'm out, I'm in sweats, I'm in t-shirts, I'm in hoodies, and I got news for you. I have been profiled as a male, more so than I would like to admit. Okay, but the first thing I do, if I'm pulled over because I have my hood on, my daughters will say, "Mom, don't wear that hood." And I said, "Why?" They're gonna think you're a guy because you're so big in a car. They don't know that you're a female, And I'm like, and I really didn't think, and it happens to me. I'm literally profiled. I'm literally pulled over because of my size, because they think I am a black male. The first thing I do when I'm getting pulled over is if I have a hoodie on, I pull the hoodie off. One, because that automatically disarms them.
Yeah, it may save life. It literally may save your life.
Exactly. It will save my life. Two, because I come from a long line of cops, I know the lingo. I know what to say. I know how to say it. I have my pocketbook on my passenger seat. Before he even gets to me, I've already have my hand. I have my wallet in my hand and my ID out. And so when he comes up, I just hand it to him. And then he looks and he's like, oh my gosh, you're what, it just disarms him that he doesn't even know what to say or how to handle it, or, and then, we deal with the situation, whatever the situation is. Most of the time it's nothing, it's a lie. But you just, I know how not to fight. I'm not going to say anything because I'm not going to kick it off. The moment I speak contrary to them, I know that it's going to escalate. So
Yeah.
I've learned from my own experience in PD how to handle a situation, how to keep it at a key level, and how to de-escalate it, in other words. But that's only
I'm
because of the
encouraged.
history of my family. But Black men don't have that. I also don't have, let's say, the gene.
Sometimes we can de-escalate, and you've seen lately, because of social media and Facebook, and you've seen all of these situations, whether they're the two young men who are, I can't remember what city, I think it was in Kentucky, in Louisville, and they come from the park and they're saying, officer, we don't have anything, officer. And he flashed the light. He said, well, you're making me nervous. You're making me nervous. He said, why are you nervous? He said, I don't know, your partner sitting over there, he may have a gun. He said, what is he doing to make you think I have a gun? It didn't look like you got shake on the ground. Is there shake on the floor? He says, officer, we don't have a gun. So they pull them out the car, they run their names, look for warrants, they put them on the ground, and then continues to tell them in the back of the police car, just be honest with me, man, you got marijuana. Officer, we don't have marijuana. Officer, we don't smoke. Officer, we wasn't smoking. And then when it's all said and done, you done kept him there 15, 20 minutes. You can't even simply just apologize because you don't feel like you have to respect him as a citizen. You don't have to say you're mistaken. And this is over and over and over. And then people say, well, at least you were lucky you got a chance to go home. And I do understand the blessing of being able to go home. But how come we're the only ones?
Well, why is it that that's the case? Why is it that the case?
That's lucky to be able to go home.
Yeah, not only that, but it's the trauma. It's the trauma of it. It's the trauma that every time I see an officer. So if you walk away from that with the mindset of Christ, you can give that person a pass. Maybe. But if you don't have the mind of Christ, you don't see someone as an image bearer, you not have aught against somebody. And now you have just created an enemy, officer, not only for you, but for every officer that these people come in contact with. And so these are the things, these are the discussions that need to happen. And then officers like, and I can imagine you being armed, me not being armed. I'm like, so what? I got one up on you, right? I'm invincible. And so as we, and I wanted to talk about something you said. We said fit the description of a Black male. Mm-hmm. Give us the description of every Black male on this call.
He's Black.
Black hair. He's Black.
That's all we need.
Give me the description. Give me the description of white guys. There is none. Red hair, blonde hair, black hair, brown hair. Like there's all these descriptions. I'm gonna fit every description if the call is Black male.
That's right.
For every description. Like this
and
is
that's all the gentleman, the McMichaels, had to say. Or it was a Black man. And in his neighborhood that's predominantly white, that gives you some kind of guilt by association. Because I'm Black, I'm guilty of something because I don't belong in your neighborhood. But I'm American and it's open and I can jog and drive and live wherever I want. At least that's what you tell me. But the reality is this country, Pastor Jones, consistently shows that Black people in this country are not going to get a fair shake until the country shakes. There must be a shaking. There must be.
Yeah,
and Pastor Jones, that's why we really depend on this type of conversation, and we really depend on you being able to stand and do what you're doing. So I applaud you in it. I'm here because of that. I applaud you in the fact that you're willing to, and I'm beginning to see people all across the country, Pastor, take this stance. So I lend my voice to it.
Yeah,
well, I think it is important.
If I can, firstly, as Brad was saying, and Bishop was, firstly, for those of you that do not know, my middle name is Jones. Bishop Traylor and I go way back, and also I go with Pastor Jones, so that's my middle name. But if coming into this situation, into this time frame, I spoke to Sister Deborah, and you know, in the conversation I had in my mind before I had a conversation with her, I was thinking, you know, all of my all of my friends growing up predominantly were black, and so I grew up with black people all around me, and the you know my three most closest friends, I call them brothers today. When Deborah and I spoke, she opened my eyes to something. I had thought just because I'm friends with black people, I know the experience. Just because they called me their friend and because I called them my best friends and we talked, that I thought, you know what, I understand them. But when Deborah really spoke to me, I realized no matter how many black friends I have and no matter how close I've been to them, I I do not understand the experience. And all I could do right now is just share a story of somebody else. But my hope is that while I'm sharing this story, people understand I'm sharing this story because number one, I believe this story, and number two, I am connected to the story, and the outcome of the story will affect me. And I think that I'm doing this because you know we need to do it. We need to realize that the story of the black experience is not just the black people's story. It's justice for the black man. For me, this is what I always say: justice for the black man is justice for all of us. What happened during the civil rights movement affected me. It provided my rights as well. I don't think we would be in the same America having having the kind of liberties as a person of color, not black, but a person of color would have had not those things happened. And I think there's a conversation that needs to be spoken, and not just from people of color, from black people. They should not be the only one generating a conversation. That we all should be a part of that. Am I wrong to say that?
No, and know what? I celebrate you having that conversation because
Yes, sir.
during the civil rights movement, there were a lot of other groups that benefited from a movement that was supposed to be about black liberation and black equality. But the feminist movement benefited from it.
Yeah.
The
Gay movement.
LGBT built it. Everybody benefited, and the black man,
And we're
amen,
still fighting.
still trying to get
Still
equality.
fighting.
Right. You're right. Other ethnicities, other nationalities benefited from the policies that were put in place, and we're still the ones fighting to just say, "Hey, I'm a man. I'm a man. I'm a man made in the image of God." And so, what I would love to see, and if you have another conversation within the next month or two, I don't want to see this conversation fall off. I think it has to generate more buzz, have more conversation. But what they're going to do with Ahmaud is they already begin to do it. The dehumanization of him, the criminalization of him.
Yes.
They're going to do all those things in the media now. Implication. They're going to talk everything about Ahmaud. They're not bringing up the background of the McMichaels. I'm seeing pictures that these guys were actually part of other pro-white groups that were hate. They were considered to be a hate group. And those discussions are not being happened because mainstream media wants to keep the same narrative. It makes good money at the criminalization and dehumanization of black people. It makes good money. Prisons are filled, police departments are funded, projects are built, public schools benefit. Everybody benefits from the devaluing, the dehumanization, and the criminalization of black people in America. Not to mention, we're still the number one consumer in America. So this is why they lead off all of their media stories. I don't care if it's liberal media or conservative. All of them lead with the same story. The black man, the crimes he's committed, and all of these kind of things. You would think the only criminal element in America is a black man. And we have to, because this is what you just said. There's everybody benefits when the black man on the black man's plight. Then the same people will benefit are very, very quiet over the black man's plight. And like you said, brother, I go back to what Brother Tyree was referencing. He made me think about the book and in the story, and it was a phrase that I grew up on Tupac Shakur. It was a phrase
Oh,
Tupac.
my Thug Life.
Yeah, he said thug life.
Yeah.
And when he was yelling thug life, what he was saying was the hate that you gave little infants F's everybody. And that's what's happening. You're actually creating a generation that is full of hate. Now, like I'll go back to
that's the trauma that those two boys.
The trauma from it, right?
It's the hatred that you give those two little boys begin to F everyone.
Everybody
begins to mess up every community, mess up the school, mess up the way they look at authority, the hatred, thug life, the initials of thug. Yeah, some people don't know the initials of thug life. Thug life, the initials, they stand for the hatred you give little infants, F everyone.
F's everybody. And that's what it is. And when you start talking about post-traumatic stress, when you come out, imagine growing up in a community where you've seen 5, 10 of your friends killed or murdered by police, or you walk in your home and your mother's on crack, or your father dying of a heroin addiction. You grow up in this kind of community, and then you see the good guys, the good ones trying to get out. They get killed by the police officer, or it's almost like you creating this environment. You create this hate, and then you act surprised, right? But if a person could go fight in Iraq for a year and come back with trauma, imagine what you're going through growing up in Brooklyn, growing up right in Chicago, Illinois, in this environment, and you're growing up in Los Angeles, growing up in New Orleans, Louisiana. Well, almost all of my friends, we could stand around and show each other bullet wounds. I got this one. He got hit here. Our city in the 90s was a literal war zone. You had to duck the robbers and the jackers. You had to duck the police. It's just, and then you grow up, man, and you're trying to find peace. And it's
even in the small towns, the small towns, Bishop, though, those have been your experience, but even in the small towns across America, those same things are happening. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to just emphasize that it's across the nation because it's an American problem.
Yeah, it's the privilege of the buddy system. There's privilege in the buddy system. Give me like 5 minutes because I wrote some things down while y'all were talking. I was talking about the trauma and the mental health. When a boy shoots up a school, the narrative of the background is split home, split family, bully, mental illness, depression, things like that. When a Black person gets shot in the middle of a street, you have 7 years ago in high school, he brought a gun to school. Like, but what was there any mental illness? Oh, well, we didn't check with that. Was there any trauma? Oh, we didn't check with that. Because here's the deal: according to what he did, it didn't result by the trauma. He was just guilty.
By Black.
He was just guilty. But if you look at the narrative of, I'm telling you, if you look at the track record of those who commit the crimes, let's just take school shooters. Mm. All right. As far as I know, the majority have been white males, right? So if we were to profile, we need to make sure that when white males go to school, that they are looked at. If we're going to profile, but we're not going to do that, okay? But now, when the school shooter comes, there is a narrative that runs down. They become a victim of mental health. And this is where the gun things come in. We need to do the mental health system. He never should have access to a gun. Look at what he's gone through. And although I'm glad they're concerned about mental health, it has to be across the board because we are all immigrants. It has got to be even. If we do not
mental health is a taboo subject in the Black community.
Yes, it's underserved. It's underfunded. The resources aren't even talked about.
Most of our mental health in our community just end up locked up in prison for a long time.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so there is a 17th century Scottish politician. Yeah. And this is why I think a lot of the Black churches are so charismatic, because we gotta let it out.
Absolutely.
Like
That's what I meant.
we've got to shout. We've got to yell. We've got to run. Because if not, I'm going to punch something. I'm going to break something.
Right.
So I got to sweat up my suit. I got to release it. Got to release it somehow. There's an 18th century Scottish writer. He said this. He said, "Let me make the songs of the nation, and I don't even care who writes the laws. Just give me the songs of the nation." Right. So when we see this generation, you talk about this generation will just take it. The reason why is because the songs of the nation are saying, I'm going to take it. I don't even care what the laws say. This is what the 18th century, he said this. I don't care who makes, he said, give me the songs of the nation. I don't even care who writes the laws. I'll write songs and the people will follow. There's a generation coming up that has not been segregated, that doesn't know about segregation when it comes to schools, unless you're on the outskirts, that their best friend, well, I mean, we have a young man on this call that hasn't spoken yet. All he's done is sing, but we have a young man who went to school with him, and this would not have happened several years ago. So as we become neighbors, and as we get to know each other, and as we begin to rub shoulders, I know that not every white person feels the same way. I know that not every Asian person is this way, every black person. As we become integrated, we see each other for who we are, image bearers, right? Then when it's like, oh, people are like this, I'm like, no, because I got a reference point. I got a reference point because my friend wasn't like that. You're trying to say that all Mexicans are like that.
That's right.
You're trying to say it all black, and I know it's not because I got a reference point. I got a reference point. When it comes to legislation, we talk about being 3/5 of a man. You're less than 3/5 of a man when you're in prison. So no, we don't have the Jim Crow law, but we got prison that will still rob you of your rights. So if we can't take them through Jim Crow, we'll take them through the justice system.
And it was all designed to still keep us oppressed. It became slavery was legal. I don't even want to say that what we have nowadays is legalized slavery, because slavery was legalized. It's just another form of slavery.
Yeah,
and that's why we get longer sentences and harsher sentences, because it was never designed for the black man to ever be equal, and I mean black man, I mean black people, to ever be equal to his white counterpart in America. And, and let me just say, not just the black person, but any Native American, Filipino, it was never designed
the minority
for minorities to ever be equal to their white counterparts. And just like you said, I know for a fact, I'm a seminarian, study of the word. I ain't just preached the word, but I've actually studied the word. And in some context, they were teaching that the black man himself was 1/5 human, so he didn't really have a soul. This was
George
Christian
Whitfield
doctrine, right? Or at least Americanized, westernized Christian doctrine.
Right. Yes, sir. Yeah, you know, wait until the Salvation Army stepped up.
Right.
The Salvation Army was one of the first movements of faith that was like, no, I am for the black man.
That's right. So
I am for it.
We have to uproot all of this teaching. We've uprooted in religion. We've uprooted it in philosophy. We're uprooting it in science. We have to uproot it now in politics. We have to uproot legislature and any policy and any laws. I'll just be honest with you. When you start showing that you have a track record of being unfair in the way you convict black people or minorities from white people, there must be a movement to call for your seat. It has to get to this, or you're not going to have any changes. I like Sister Deborah said, woman of God said, listen, she said, I don't have a problem with police officers. I got police in my family. I don't have a problem with police. I have police in my family. I have police officers that's in my church. I have family that's military. My daughter is military. Here's the reality, though. There's a majority of police officers in America that if they don't do these heinous crimes or abusive crimes, they stand behind the blue line silently.
Exactly.
The other day was Sean Reed. Now I watched it and I wasn't gonna comment on it because was supposed to be in a stolen car. He Facebook lived himself making fun of the police following in him and playing loud music and doing all these crazy things. And I'm sitting here saying, this boy will get himself killed. Watching the video. Of course, he gets to a point where he said, I'm about to park it and I'm gonna run because I'm not going to jail today. He said, I'm gonna run. I'm going on this street. Y'all come get me. He gets out with his phone in his hand and his shirt in his hand. He's running. The cop tells him, freeze, stop. He cusses at the cop. I'm not stopping. They tase him. When they tase him, another cop decides to shoot him 10 plus times. Now, what's going to start is the criminalization of Sean Reed. He was in a stolen car. He was on a police chase. He shouldn't have did all that. He would have got killed. This is what black people are going to say, brother Pastor Jones. But a young man went into a black church and killed 9 people.
Walked out.
Y'all got him out without a scratch and even took him to Burger King. A young man shot up a white brother shot up a movie theater, shot 22-something people. Y'all got him out the movie theater and he made it to court. The problem is when a black man steals the car and runs from the police, or like when the older gentleman, Walter Scott, was stopped in the park, ran from the police. Police officer let him run, spied up on him, shot him 5-6 times in the back. Those stories don't happen in white America. That's just the bottom line.
Right. Well, what was the narrative of these people that shot up the school and shot up the church? Mental health, broken home, bully,
and the young
poor
man,
him.
Sean Reed, he was actually in the military, and his people are saying he has a history of mental health. But you're not going to hear that he had mental health issues.
Right.
You're not going to hear that. You're going to hear he was a criminal. He should have obeyed the police officer's command.
Yeah.
The other day in New York, there was supposed to be a stay-at-home order, stay-at-home lockdown order. The Jews were having a funeral in New York. See, that's the problem with social media. Not everybody can see everything. Now, everybody else can't have a funeral. Your people die of COVID. You got to give them 3 days. Can't nobody even come. There's Jews, white brothers, white Jews are having an entire funeral in the streets of New York. The police come to basically, I guess, tell them, stop, y'all don't have no masks on. They protest. One ever got belligerent. They knocked his religious hat off his head. He wouldn't let them handcuff him. They put his hat back on his head, got him in the car. Nobody maced the crowd. Nobody beat up anybody. And they still finished with their funeral. On the exact other side of town, there was a whole mob of black people that were beaten and maced even a young lady in the street for breaking the stay-at-home order. This is what we're talking about, the consistent devaluing and dehumanization of black people. I know for a fact there's a white pastor in Louisiana who kept having church. Mm-hmm. And he was arrested 3 times. They put an ankle bracelet on him. And I respect his religious right. That's a whole nother argument. But I guarantee you this, and I can say this emphatically, let a black pastor try that. Let a black pastor in any inner city talk about he gonna continue to have church against a stay-at-home order from a governor. They're going in that church.
Yes, sir.
They're gonna arrest that pastor, and
somebody gonna get beat. And somebody gonna get beat.
And they may get beat. That's right. This is, and we have history on this. This is a reality, Pastor Jones. The laws must be changed. At this point, the laws must be changed. And I don't even we got to show up at the polls. I don't even know if we can trust the polls. That's me personally. But the laws have to change. I'm not one who believes in segregation. I believe in integration. I do. But at times I do feel like what Martin Luther King said. At times I do feel like I'm leading my people into a burning house.
Yes, sir.
Because those who with the power have to speak on behalf of those who don't have power. And we're a minority in this country. We don't have the power that our white country.
So Bishop, on Sundays, the most segregated day hours in a week. Here we are on Sunday. But in the evangelical churches all across the country, set those that have the power. This is where I started. There's the power. Where's the influence? Where's the conversation happening to those that have the power?
So we got to have people that's willing to sit at the table. I'll be honest with you. There'll be people that are politicized that. If you sit at the table, brother, with certain people, they're going to say, why are you even sitting at the table? But in order for us to have these conversations, we have to sit at the table with people that we may have difference with, in order to come to some form of mutual understanding. Yeah. Even Bloods and Crips have to sit at the table to get a compromise, get a peace treaty. Vice Lords and Gangster Disciples, if they don't have a peace treaty, they have to sit at the table. Right. We're going to have to get at the table with people of power.
If I can come in, if I come here, and I love the conversation that's been happening. I feel like it's such a rich conversation right now, and I'm just learning so much. Uh, but it's been 2 hours. We've been talking. It just feels like it's flew. And I'm gonna take your lead on it, Bishop, and strike up this conversation again. But before we need to close. I'm sure everybody's got their time schedules, and I'm sure we could all talk about this for the next 2, 3 more hours. But we do have to close the program, and just allow people to talk and respond, and talk about what we spoke about here, and what I've heard and what I've listened. And I think I want to just greet everybody, to let everybody know, hey, you don't have to say anything if you are not in the experience. You can sit down like I did tonight and just listen, and just take the heart and say, look, um, you guys move, or I will allow for the conversation. I will open and foster conversation. I'm here to listen. And what do you guys think about that? That's a good position, correct?
I
Most
think
definitely.
I think platforms that are being used for this cause is just allowing someone to speak from your platform. I can't get out of my head. Image bearers, man.
Yeah.
We are see my son as an image bearer. I
Well, I
do
want
not want
to.
to be a hashtag. I do
Amen.
not want to be a
Definitely.
hashtag.
Yeah.
I want my life to be worth so much more.
Well,
Um,
I wanna take the last few minutes of our time. I'm gonna allow Brother David to come in. He has written a song to commemorate his friend, his brother Ahmaud, and we will let him share with that. And then after he's done, we'll give everybody just one last comment, and we will close the program. Thank you, Brother David.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I tried to stay a little quiet, kind of like you were saying. I'd rather just listen
God
because
bless you.
I'm not a part of that experience. I'm part of that younger generation, but I want to make a change in the world. I feel like this song is definitely a step in that change. No words can satisfy. Nothing can end this fight. This is the human race. The war we built inside. No actions justified. You took a human life. Hatred and agony. Corruption in your veins. Corruption in your veins. Oh, injustice prevails while the world around us is spinning. Injustice remains. The innocent brain are guilty. This anger, enraged, deep-seated wounds are reopened. The beast in the cage, only triggered by the fears around him. No words can mend the pain or heal the broken heart, but we can rise again, fight for the ones who can't. No words can end the pain or heal the broken heart, but we can rise again, fight for the ones who can. Like a moth, injustice prevails while the world around us is spinning. Injustice remains while the innocent framed are guilty. This anger, enraged, deep-seated wounds are reopened. The beast in the cage, only triggered by the fears around him. only triggered by the fears around him. Stand up for the injustice. Stand up for those who were wronged. Stand up for the children. Stand up for those who were lost. Oh, stand up. Stand up for the injustice. Stand up for the ones who were wrong. Stand up for the children. Oh, stand up for the ones who were lost. Oh, stand up for mom. Stand up for mom. And all the injustice.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Wow.
Powerful.
Injustice prevails. Shoo.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Wrote
Wow.
that song in
What a
about 10
phrase.
minutes because I was so pissed because I knew Ahmaud. I was friends with him. He was about 3 years older than I was, so I was a freshman when he was a senior. But we had a lot of the same friend circles, so yeah, it was very personal. And I hate how that's kind of what's defined our community. People know Glenn County by that racist, very racist act. And as a community, we've risen up and said, you know, we don't want to be defined by this. We want to fight the injustice. And I'm so
Let me ask you
thankful.
this: why would you say? Now I'm putting you on the spot. Why would you say? Why would you jump and say racist act? I
'Cause
mean,
I feel that's-
you live in the community.
Yeah.
We're from the outside, but many people from the outside looked in and called it racist, and people are like, "Well, don't do that until we hear the facts, right? Till we hear the facts. I guess we need to hear the guy call Ahmaud the N-word for it to
Yeah.
be a racist act. But why would you call it a racist act?
From me being a very white privileged person, when I see what I saw, what happened, it was an act of pure racism because of his skin color. They hunted him down like an animal. That's what the McMichaels did, and that's what I saw it as.
Yeah.
There's
I
so much that can be said there. Like you guys are saying, there's so much. And I don't understand the experience because again, I'm 22, I'm white, I'm young, I'm middle class, and I do have African American friends, I have Asian friends and everything else, but I still don't know the experience. I don't get that. And thank you, all of you, for sharing that, what that looks like. Just a fraction of what it looks like.
Yeah, David, thank you, man.
Yeah.
That means that begins to soothe the pain that I feel when I see my timeline.
Yeah.
I hear, let's not jump to conclusions. Let's wait for the facts, and it's a direct contradiction to everything I see them say. It's a contradiction to, like, no one says this when the politician they hate the most is accused of a sexual crime. It's not, well, let's wait for the facts to come out first. Let's wait to see if they're found guilty, and then we'll have the conversation. That's not the thing. It is, I saw it on my news channel that I watch. Therefore, it's facts, right? And the fact that when the right people saw the video, they acted within 48 hours. So it's like, okay, now law enforcement is involved. They got involved. How come that's not enough? How come it still looks at like the perpetrators are still the ones that were in the right, when now they are literally arrested for what they did? Like, you don't get arrested. Well, two white men with a gun down on a black man don't get arrested because they were in the wrong, right? So a justice system saw them wrong when the right people saw the video, and it still isn't enough.
It's not.
Still isn't enough. It's still what he did 7 years ago.
the conversation doesn't start here. That's when it should begin.
Yes, sir.
That's what I feel. And it took way too much. This should have happened 2 months ago when the actual murder took place. It shouldn't have taken the video to get them to get off their asses, excuse my language, and do it. It should not have done that. It should have happened a while back when the murder first happened. They just were sorry they got caught. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. I feel guilty not taking a shopping cart back where it belongs. I feel guilty going into a retail store, unfolding a shirt, walking away with it, and putting it in like the food aisle. I feel guilty. There's no way I could take a life.
Yeah.
There's no way I could take a life and go home and sit on my couch like everything is sweet.
Yeah.
There is no way.
As value system, you're talking about your value system. And
Yeah, there is no way that drives that I can't. So I have never thought about owning a gun until Friday. I've never thought about owning a firearm until Friday. I looked at my wife and I said, I've got to fill out the paperwork. I've never thought I could take a human life. Never. But this issue alone has caused me to rethink so many things. I don't know. I got an athletic son, y'all.
Yeah.
I live in a white neighborhood, y'all. You know, part of me is like, hey, we did it. We moved out. Did I?
That's real there, brother.
Yeah.
My son just graduated from a D1 school in the athletic program in Tennessee. I'm not going to just give up where his location, but he's been benefit to go to predominantly white schools, play football. And we're in Mississippi. I still live personally in a predominantly Black neighborhood, but my son doesn't, and he's managing a Fortune 500 company now. He stays in a predominantly white neighborhood. He's a big fella. He's 6'3", 6'4", now 325 pounds. And after Ahmaud was killed, he called me and he said, Pop. After I shared it, he said, Pop. He saw the video and he told me, he said, Pop, I know the way you raised me. He said, but I want you to know that's not happening to me. I'm not going out like that, Pop. So our kids do take it personal. Mm-hmm. Our kids, my son was raised in the church. You know, he made it out. Like you say, he felt like, man, I moved up, I made it up. He drives a nice car. He lives in an apartment, and his mom's always telling him, you know, he even dates outside of race, and which we don't have no problem with that. You see? But I'm trying to also get him to understand the world he lives in.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't have no problem with it. Like Pastor Jones said, man, I minister to youth and churches across the platform. My last two major conferences at the AWCF, you get 3,000, 4,000 people come from literally all over the world. So I know, and I hear people all the time say, God don't see color. God does see color. God just don't hate you for your color.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference, man, and us getting to a point where we can have honest conversation about race so we can also move forward to coming up with solutions. Pastor Jones, your camera shifted? Your camera shifted on you.
Yeah. Hey, Pastor,
we get sleepy.
Yeah, we will end this. We will end this. I'll go first with ending it. I believe at as a legislative level, our local elections are so important.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like at the federal level, obviously, yes, but they start from somewhere. You just don't jump into a federal spot. These local elections and how they manage their court systems, and how they manage police departments. This is all local level. And so I encourage every person that sees people as image bearers to vote for your candidate that honors image bearers. that looks at humanity across the board as equal. That's where I think if I could walk away with anything, so I need to walk away from a meeting or something knowing that it was tied up somehow,
Yeah,
some way.
that's
If
right.
I could tie it up somehow, some way,
Yeah.
I would say believers, federal president, like so many times our president has said, I'm gonna let it up to the governors to make their decision. That's local level. Those local elections, school boards, how schools are run, how things are managed. Local elections are so important. And do I obviously prayer, but God has given us a nation. He's allowed me to live in a nation that my vote should be able to count and matter for something. So I would be a fool to not use that tool to better the movement of image bearers. And so if I were to wrap this up, that's what I would say. Those local elections every 2 years or so, like they are absolutely so important. I feel like that's where we will see the most. I believe that's where we'll see the quickest change. The quickest change.
Amen.
Well, let me jump in here real quick and just say the key thing about that though is that the African American community must be educated to understand how important elections are.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If they don't understand the principles of politics and how to function
Right.
with the system.
Right.
And now I'm not talking about function like to change, you have to know your enemy as you know yourself.
Right.
The more you know your enemy, the more you can deal with it.
Right.
Okay. I'm a warrior. I'm a prayer warrior. I know my enemy, and I also know how to battle against my enemy through prayer, fasting, worship, etc., etc. When you're dealing with racism, when you're dealing with discrimination, and let's face it, it's not just in this country nowadays. It's not just African Americans that are being discriminated. You have Hispanics, you have, but systemically, yes, it's been African Americans. We have to be educated to understand how important it is to get involved in the political circle so that our vote matters. Right. If we don't vote and we stay home, then
we're not even 3/5 of a man, we're zero. Our
exactly.
votes definitely don't count.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's happening is that's why education, one of my prayers, and I'm gonna tell you what I've been praying, is for, how they talk about, well, we need to for reparation for slavery. I've been asking God to let there be an education clause that every African American get a college education for free. Make it a tax exempt for the universities that are private, make it tax exemptable for them so that education can be free for African Americans. Now, the sad thing here is over in Europe, college is free in Europe. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Just like medical in Canada is, free. Even Cuba has free medicine. Okay. And I'm like, we're here, it's all about the dollar. It's all about power and money. And until we are educated and understand what that vote means, the change can't evolve. But what I will say, and this is the last thing, I have to bring up, brothers and sisters, if you can get a chance, one of the things I see is that our young people have no idea the struggle of what the African American male has gone through as far as being lynched, the women, and what has been gone through from slavery time to where we are today. And how I hipped it up to Pastor Jay in that conversation he's talking about. I said, have you ever heard Billie Holiday's song, Strange Fruit? And he had never heard of it. And I said, go listen, Google it up, YouTube it up. But most of all, read the lyrics. And what happened was people don't even know that song was written by a Jewish man. It was a poem. that was placed to music. Strange Fruit was written by a Jewish man because he saw two teenage boys hanging from a tree in 1930, okay, and were beaten and everything else. And he saw the white masses around that tree celebrating, laughing as these two boys just hung there. And this man, about 6 years later, got a picture because they made postcards out of them, okay, out of the photograph. They actually made postcards about this. And a Jewish man found it. His name was Abel. What was it? Abel. I wrote it down. Marable. Abel Marable. He saw the picture, and almost 7 years later, and he wrote Strange Fruit.
Wow.
Okay. And what happened was it was given to Billie Holiday. She didn't want to sing it because she thought she would get killed in the Village, in West Village in New York. And they said, no. They set up certain rules. But anyway, our kids aren't even aware
History.
of this. Has been something that has been going on. And I'll tell you why we've gotten to this self-defense mode that now let's just say the racist perspective that we're fighting has changed its tactics. And the reason why it has changed is because at a certain point in 1981, now listen to the year, in 1981, the South Poverty Law Center took the Donald family and took them and actually sued the KKK organization and won over $6 million and wiped them out financially, took their land. And so they knew they couldn't go along hanging people anymore because it was downright murder. They had to change the strategy. Now the strategy is it's self-defense. Let's shoot them and say it's self-defense. Now the government has to prove that it's otherwise. But we have a government that's not interested in proving that it's otherwise.
From a black man.
Instead, they will criminalize the individual that is dead. They will do a drop gun in a situation that is a bad shoot. Well, I don't know if you guys know about drop guns, but a drop gun is a clean gun that police officers will drop at a scene to make it look like it was a righteous shoot when it wasn't. And the bottom line here is it comes back to not understanding that the way it is now, we're looking for a government that has criminalized African Americans just because of the color of our skin. And we're asking them to prove that it was self-defense, that it wasn't self-defense, really? Whereas and from their perspective, they're innocent until proven guilty. We're guilty until proven innocent. So by doing it this way, the KKK and other organizations, the police department, they have now changed the tide from killing Black men murder to killing Black men and saying self-defense. And then expecting a government to prove otherwise, who isn't interested in proving otherwise. So what I will say is, please, if you can, because this was the greatest thing, the 75th anniversary of Strange Fruit. There was, it's called Strange Fruit, the history of the song of the century. It is so powerful because it's done with just such an imagination of telling the history of Strange Fruit. It talks about what happened and how these two young Black males, these teenagers, 16 and 17 years old, were pulled out of jail and killed and hung. It talks about the crowd and their atmosphere, but it's all done in rapping. So you have one rapping what happened. You have another one rapping it from the perspective of Jesus Christ hanging on the tree for our sins, and comparing the two. And then you have the third man giving the history behind the song itself. And you have children talking, Martin Luther King's, it was just very well done. And I would recommend that if people really want to understand what has been perpetually going on, it's just same mindset, just different time, different strategy. Okay.
Brad, you want to?
Yeah, if I could, I'm gonna stand in lane of what she just said. I just want to give you several books. I want to give these out to you guys, and I pray that you go and read them. And I hope maybe you've already read into them. The first book is Divided by Faith. It's the Evangelical Religion and the Problem of Race in America. It's a great read. It talks about the racialization of America that goes back, and it looks at systemically the problem of race in America and the church's response to that. I just want to put that out in front, because I believe that's, to me, that is even before the politics. Part of the problem as a spiritual organization, us being spiritual, we understand that we're in the world, but we're not of the world, but we're in a kingdom. So even our answer cannot come from a place of politics. The second book was simply being America's Original Sin by Jim Wallace. If you write that down, it's a great book. Rescuing the Gospel from the Cowboys by Richard Twist. Great book. And the last one, The Cross and the Lynching Tree by James Cone. If you're reading those books, it gives you insight. They're relatively new books written within the last 10 years. They've woken me up. They've awakened me. I believe what the bishop was saying was spot on. It's time. Or there's going to be blood in the streets. There was blood on the cross. That's the blood that we live under, covered in. But if we don't move soon, there's going to be blood in the streets. So I thank you once again, and I'm gonna get out of you guys' hair.
Thank you, Brad. Bishop, you want to close this out?
We're in a time where we're in a time of great social change, spiritual change, economic change. We're in what I call an epochal shift, not a dispensational shift, but even those who are philosophical and even astrological understand we're moving from one age to a next. An understanding of time and place gives us an opportunity to operate with wisdom. Anarchy and revolution will be the result of failing to have a true revival. If we don't have a true revival, a revival of ethics, a revival of human compassion, then we will have rioting in the streets. Because rioting, according to Dr. King, he said riots are the voice of the unheard. And the people don't feel like they're being heard. The people don't feel like they're being heard. And that, like our sister Deborah said, this generation don't understand all of those things. They don't know about all those things. All they know is they're being the ones consistently targeted, beaten, abused, and oppressed. And even for those who say that may not be the reality, well, that's what's on your cycle. That's what's being spinned on your media, and that's what's programming this generation. So either you have revival or you will have riot. I'm asking the churches and anybody who's under the sound of my voice, we can't close our eyes at this thing. We can't close our eyes at racism. We must speak out against it. We must collectively move together against it. White arm connected to black arm, connected to brown arm. We must have one voice. And that one voice must cry out for justice, not just on beginning. If you didn't do before, begin with Ahmaud. But there's a bunch of us have been crying for justice when it was blue on black crime, white on black crime, and believe it or not, we cry for justice on black crime. We don't have to, we can chew gum and walk at the same time. We advocates for justice. And justice to people anywhere is injustice to people everywhere, right? And I don't claim to be a civil rights leader. I claim to be a leader in the kingdom. And there's no way I can be a kingdom leader and not cry for justice.
My man.
I love y'all. I appreciate this opportunity.
Too,
Bishop, I need your information, Bishop. I need your information. I need to be able to link into you.
Amen. I am on Facebook at Lionel J. Trailer, Lionel like Lionel Richie, Lionel like Lionel Messi, depending on which generation you want to do. If you don't know Lionel Richie, you know Lionel Messi. Lionel J. Trailer, that's Trailer just like Taylor, only with an R, Traylor. Lionel J. Trailer on Facebook, Lionel J. Trailer on Instagram. I got off Twitter. And of course, my webpage is www.LionelJTrailerMinistries.com. Lionel J. Trailer Ministries.com. Send me a friend request on the Lionel Trailer Facebook page. My Lionel J. Trailer is full. You can follow me on Instagram.
Thank you,
Well,
sir.
everybody, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, panels. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Tyree. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sister Deborah. It's just an incredible conversation tonight, and I am so blessed to have had everybody join us tonight. And I'm praying that my audience today have have heard something that not only has impacted their mind, but it has caused you to stir within your heart to do something. And I can't express my heart and the broken spirit that I have with the situation, but I feel like this kind of things need to continue, and it needs to begin not only in the house of our black brothers and sisters, but in every household. This conversation has to go, and it has to continue until, like Martin Luther said, we're not going to be satisfied until justice flows like the river. And so we're here. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, panel, for joining me. God bless you, and until next time, love Jesus and love people.
Amen.
Amen.
God bless you, Pastor. Thank you.
God bless you.
Bless you all. Don't cut me off, son.